Alexander Milne was an English author, best known for his books about the teddy bear Winnie-the-Pooh and for various poems. Milne was a noted writer, primarily as a playwright, before the huge success of Pooh overshadowed all his previous work. Milne served in both World Wars, joining the British Army in World War I, and was a captain of the British Home Guard in World War II. Biography. Alexander Milne was born in Kilburn, London to parents John Vince Milne, who was Scottish, and Sarah Marie Milne, and grew up at Henley House School, 6/7 Mortimer Road, Kilburn, a small public school run by his father. One of his teachers was H. G. Wells, who taught there in 1889–90. Milne attended Westminster School and Trinity College, Cambridge, where he studied on a mathematics scholarship, graduating with a B.A. in mathematics in 1903. While there, he edited and wrote for Granta, a student magazine. He collaborated with his brother Kenneth, and their articles appeared over the initials AKM. Milne's work came to the attention of the leading British humour magazine Punch, where Milne was to become a contributor and later an assistant editor. Milne played for the amateur English cricket team the Hackberries alongside authors J. M. Barrie and Arthur Conan Doyle. Milne joined the British Army in World War I and served as an officer in the Royal Warwickshire Regiment and later, after a debilitating illness, the Royal Corps of Signals. He was commissioned into the 4th Battalion, Royal Warwickshire Regiment on 17 February 1915 as a second lieutenant. His commission was confirmed on 20 December 1915. On 7 July 1916, he was injured while serving in the Battle of the Somme and invalided back to England. Having recuperated, he was recruited into military intelligence to write propaganda articles for Me-7B between 1916 and 1918. He was discharged on 14 February 1919, and settled in Mallard Street, Chelsea. He relinquished his commission on 19 February 1920, retaining the rank of lieutenant. After the war, he wrote a denunciation of war titled Peace with Honor, which he retracted somewhat with 1940's War with Honor. During World War II, Milne was one of the most prominent critics of fellow English writer P. G. Wodehouse, who was captured at his country home in France by the Nazis and imprisoned for a year. Wodehouse made radio broadcasts about his internment, which were broadcast from Berlin. Although the light-hearted broadcasts made fun of the Germans, Milne accused Wodehouse of committing an act of near treason by cooperating with his country's enemy. Wodehouse got some revenge on his former friend by creating fatuous parodies of the Christopher Robin poems in some of his later stories, and claiming that Milne was probably jealous of all other writers. But I loved his stuff. Milne married Dorothy Daphne de Salincourt in 1913, and the son Christopher Robin Milne was born in 1920. In 1925, A. Milne bought a country home, Cochford Farm, in Hartfield, East Sussex. During World War II, A. Milne was captain of the British Home Guard in Hartfield and Amp Forest Row, insisting on being plain Mr. Milne to the members of his platoon. He retired to the farm after a stroke, and brain surgery in 1952 left him an invalid, and by August 1953, he seemed very old and disenchanted. Milne died in January 1956, aged 74. Literary career. After graduating from Cambridge in 1903, A. Milne contributed humorous verse and whimsical essays to Punch, joining the staff in 1906 and becoming an assistant editor. During this period he published 18 plays and 3 novels, including the murder mystery The Red House Mystery. His son was born in August 1920, and in 1924 Milne produced a collection of children's poems When We Were Very Young, which were illustrated by Punch staff cartoonist E.H. Shepard, a collection of short stories for children, gallery of children, and other stories that became part of the Winnie-the-Pooh books, were first published in 1925. Milne was an early screenwriter for the nascent British film industry, writing 4 stories filmed in 1920 for the company Minerva Films. These were The Bump, starring Aubrey Smith, twice £2 £5 reward, and Bookworms. Some of these films survive in the archives of the British Film Institute. Milne had met Howard when the actor starred in Milne's play Mr. Pym Passes By in London. Looking back on this period, Milne observed that when he told his agent that he was going to write a detective story, he was told that what the country wanted from a punch humorist was a humorous story. When 2 years later he said he was writing nursery rhymes, his agent and publisher were convinced he should write another detective story, and after another 2 years, he was being told that writing a detective story would be in the worst of taste given the demand for children's books. He concluded that the only excuse which I have yet discovered for writing anything is that I want to write it, and I should be as proud to be delivered of a telephone directory column or as I should be ashamed to create a blank verse tragedy at the bidding of others. 1926 to 1928. Milne is most famous for his 2 Pooh books about a boy named Christopher Robin after his son, Christopher Robin Milne, and various characters inspired by his son's stuffed animals, most notably the bear named Winnie-the-Pooh. Christopher Robin Milne's stuffed bear, originally named Edward, was renamed Winnie-the-Pooh after a Canadian black bear named Winnie, which was used as a military mascot in World War I, and left to London Zoo during the war. The Pooh comes from a swan called Pooh. E.H. Shepard illustrated the original Pooh books, using his own son's Teddy, Growler, as the model. The rest of Christopher Robin Milne's toys, Piglet, Eeyore, Kangaroo and Tigger, were incorporated into A. Milne's stories, and 2 more characters, Rabbit and Owl, were created by Milne's imagination. Christopher Robin Milne's own toys are now under glass in New York, where 750,000 people visit them every year. The fictional 100-acre wood of the Pooh stories derives from 500-acre wood in Ashdown Forest in East Sussex, southeast England, where the Pooh stories were set. Milne lived on the northern edge of the forest at Cochford Farm, 51.090 degrees north, 0.107 degrees east, 51.090, 0.107, and took his son walking there. E.H. Shepard drew on the landscapes of Ashdown Forest as inspiration for many of the illustrations he provided for the Pooh books. The adult Christopher Robin commented, "Pooh's forest and Ashdown Forest are identical." Popular tourist locations at Ashdown Forest include Galleon's Lap, the Enchanted Place, the Heffalump Trap and Lone Pine, Eeyore's Sad and Gloomy Place, and the wooden Pooh Bridge where Pooh and Piglet invented Pooh Sticks. Not yet known as Pooh, he made his first appearance in a poem, Teddy Bear, published in Punch magazine in February 1924. Pooh first appeared in the London Evening News on Christmas Eve 1925, in a story called The Wrong Sort of Bees. Winnie-the-Pooh was published in 1926, followed by The House at Pooh Corner in 1928. A second collection of nursery rhymes, Now We Are 6, was published in 1927. All 3 books were illustrated by E.H. Shepard. Milne also published 4 plays in this period. He also gallantly stepped forward to contribute a quarter of the costs of dramatizing P.G. Wodehouse's A Damsel in Distress. The World of Pooh won the Lewis Carroll Shelf Award in 1958. 1929 onwards, the success of his children's books was to become a source of considerable annoyance to Milne, whose self-avowed aim was to write whatever he pleased and who had, until then, found a ready audience for each change of direction. He had freed pre-war Punch from its ponderous facetiousness. He had made a considerable reputation as a playwright on both sides of the Atlantic. He had produced a witty piece of detective writing in the Red House mystery. But once Milne had, in his own words, said goodbye to all that in 70,000 words, he had no intention of producing any reworkings lacking in originality, given that one of the sources of inspiration, his son, was growing older. In his literary home, Punch, where the When We Were Very Young verses had first appeared, Methuen continued to publish whatever Milne wrote, including the long poem, The Norman Church, and an assembly of articles entitled Year In, Year Out. In 1930, Milne adapted Kenneth Grahame's novel The Wind in the Willows for the stage as Toad of Toad Hall. The title was an implicit admission that such chapters as Chapter 7, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, could not survive translation to the theatre. A special introduction written by Milne is included in some editions of Grahame's novel, Legacy and Commemoration. The rights to A. Milne's Pooh books were left to four beneficiaries: his family, the Royal Literary Fund, Westminster School and the Garrick Club. After Milne's death in 1956, 1 week and 6 days after his 74th birthday, his widow sold her rights to the Pooh characters to Stephen Schlesinger, whose widow sold the rights after Schlesinger's death to the Walt Disney Company, which has made many Pooh cartoon movies, a Disney Channel television show, as well as Pooh-related merchandise. In 2001, the other beneficiaries sold their interest in the estate to the Disney Corporation for $350 million. Previously, Disney had been paying twice yearly royalties to these beneficiaries. The estate of E. H. Shepard also received a sum in the deal. The copyright on Winnie-the-Pooh expires in 2026. In 2008, a collection of original illustrations featuring Winnie-the-Pooh and his animal friends sold for more than £1.2 million at auction in Sotheby's, London. Forbes magazine ranked Winnie-the-Pooh the most valuable fictional character in 2002. Winnie-the-Pooh merchandising products alone had annual sales of more than $5.9 billion. In 2005, Winnie-the-Pooh generated $6 billion, a figure surpassed by only Mickey Mouse. A memorial plaque in Ashdown Forest, unveiled by Christopher Robin in 1979, commemorates the work of A. Milne and Shepard in creating the world of Pooh. Milne once wrote of Ashdown Forest, "In that enchanted place on the top of the forest a little boy and his bear will always be playing." In 2003, Winnie-the-Pooh was listed at number 7 on the BBC survey The Big Read. In 2006, Winnie-the-Pooh received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, marking the 80th birthday of Milne's creation. That same year, a UK poll saw Winnie-the-Pooh voted onto the list of icons of England. Several of Milne's children's poems were set to music by the composer Harold Fraser Simpson. His poems have been parodied many times, including with the books When We Were Rather Older and Now We Are 60. The 1963 film The King's Breakfast was based on Milne's poem of the same name. Religious views. Milne did not speak out much on the subject of religion, although he used religious terms to explain his decision, while remaining a pacifist, to join the British Home Guard. In fighting Hitler, he wrote, "We are truly fighting the devil, the Antichrist. Hitler was a crusader against God." His best-known comment on the subject was recalled on his death. "The Old Testament is responsible for more atheism, agnosticism, disbelief, call it what you will, than any book ever written. It has emptied more churches than all the counter-attractions of cinema, motor bicycle and golf course." He wrote in the poem, explained. He also wrote in the poem Vespers, works, novels, Lovers in London. Once on a time, Mr. Pym, The Red House Mystery, Two People, 4 Days Wonder, Chloe Ma, non-fiction piece with honor. It's Too Late Now, the autobiography of a writer. War with Honor, War Aims Unlimited, Year In, Year Out. Punch articles, The Day's Play, Once a Week, The Holiday Round, The Sunny Side. Those were the days. Newspaper articles and book introductions. The Chronicles of Clovis by Saki. Not that it matters. By way of introduction, it depends on the book. Story collections for children. A Gallery of Children. Winnie-the-Pooh, The House at Pooh Corner. Short stories. Poetry collections for children. When we were very young. Now we are 6. Story collections. The Secret and Other Stories. The Birthday Party. A Table Near the Band. Poetry for the Luncheon Interval. When we were very young. Now we are 6. Behind the Lines. The Norman Church. The Knight Whose Armor Didn't Squeak. Screenplays and Plays. Wurzel Flummery. Belinda. The Boy Comes Home. Make-Believe. The Cambly Triangle. Mr. Pym Passes By. The Red Feathers. The Bump, starring Aubrey Smith. Twice 2. £5 Reward. Bookworms. The Great Broxop. The Dover Road. The Lucky One. The Truth About Blades. The Artist. A Duologue. Give Me Yesterday. Ariadne. The Man in the Bowler Hat. A Terribly Exciting Affair. To Have the Honor. Portrait of a Gentleman in Slippers. Success. Miss Marlowe at Play. The Fourth Wall of the Perfect Alibi. Directed by Basil Dean. The Ivory Door. Toad of Toad Hall. Michael and Mary. Other People's Lives. Miss Elizabeth Bennet. Sarah Simple. Gentleman Unknown. The General Takes Off His Helmet in the Queen's Book of the Red Cross. The Ugly Duckling. Before the Flood.